Welcome, everyone, to the Economic Club of New York. This is Barbara Van Ellen, president of the club, and we're going to get started in 1 minute. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and welcome to the 605th meeting of the Economic Club of New York. And this is our 114th year. I'm John Williams. I'm chair of the club and the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Now, as many of you know, the Economic Club of New York is the nation's leading nonpartisan forum for discussions on economic, social, and political issues. And our mission is as important today as ever as we continue to bring people together as a catalyst for conversation and innovation. This past fall, the club launched its Focus on Racial Equity series, where we've been leveraging our platform to bring together prominent thought leaders to help us explore and better understand the various dimensions of racial inequity and highlight strategies, best practices, and resources that the business community can use to be a force for change. Now, we're not doing this work alone, and we'd like to give special thanks to our corporate partners, BlackRock, Bloomberg, MasterCard, PayPal, S&P Global, and Taconic Capital, as well as the many members, speakers, and subject matter experts that are now and will be engaged in this work. A special welcome to members of the Economic Club of New York 2021 class of fellows, a select group of diverse, rising, next-gen business thought leaders, and welcome to the graduate students from Howard University and Rutgers University. Now, it's a pleasure for me now to welcome our special guest today, Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick. In 2014, Wayne was appointed the 17th president of Howard University. A distinguished scholar and administrator, Wayne has advanced Howard University's commitment to student opportunity, academic innovation, public service, and fiscal stability. Wayne is a widely recognized expert on disparities in healthcare and medical education. His medical research focuses on narrowing racial, ethnic, and gender disparities in cancer care outcomes. And Wayne has also been featured as one of America's best physicians by Black Enterprise magazine, and he was named one of Ebony's magazine's Power 100 and recognized as a super doctor in the Washington Post magazine. Now, the format today will be a conversation which we're fortunate to have club trustee and president of the Fashion Institute of Technology, Dr. Joyce Brown, doing the honors and moderating. And we'll end promptly at 11:45. And as a reminder, this conversation is on the record as we do have media on the line. So without further ado, Joyce, I'm handing the mic to you.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to everyone. And to you, Dr. Frederick, it's so nice to be with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I just want to say, if there's anybody in the audience who is not aware of the impact that Howard University has had on our society, I do hope you will emerge from this experience with an appreciation of the immeasurable influence that this premier historically Black college has had over the past 150 plus years on our society in so many ways, but certainly with its renowned hospital and medical school, including educating the largest number of African American students who enter the medical field. And of course, it also has helped in the growth and development of the Black middle class and beyond in our society. So Dr. Frederick has the reins of an incredibly important resource in our country and in our society. So I know, Dr. Frederick, you were having a nice semester in the spring of 2020. You were pursuing your strategic plan and strengthening your academic programs, and then a little thing called a pandemic came along. So tell us a little bit about what you did, how that impacted life at Howard. I know it was massive. How would you encapsulate what happened at that point?
Sure. And again, I want to thank you for having me in the Economic Club of New York. You know, the spring of 2020 was a difficult time. We had launched our strategic plan just a year before. We were beginning to see growth in several areas, including in philanthropy. And we were putting infrastructure in. So had quite a few things going on, like I think everybody else in the world. My mentor, Dr. LaSalle Lafall, who passed away a couple of years ago, was the first Black president of the American Cancer Society and the first Black president of American College of Surgeons, had a saying, equanimity under duress. And obviously for surgeons, you need that. When everything is bleeding and going awry, you've got to be focused and almost become still. And I think it's good training for what happened in spring. I tried to get everyone to just kind of bring it down a notch in terms of the anxiety and for us to focus on what was important. First thing that was important was health and safety, getting the campus to a safe environment. Could we do that with everyone on campus with evolving information? No, it was clear that we had to get everyone home. And so doing that was a priority. Once we had done that, though, we started to shift into the mode of how can we continue our education, obviously doing that online. And I credit the faculty for making such a swift move. But Howard is about truth and service. And so focusing on the community very quickly became a major part of what we were doing, standing up, testing sites in Ward 7 and 8, not requiring prescriptions from a physician to get a test we felt was important, and recognizing that a lot of those citizens in Ward 7 and 8 is where the lower income brackets are in our city, it was important to recognize that they wouldn't be able to quarantine, et cetera. And so trying to get them. So it was a learning lesson, but it's also embodied what Howard is about and why we're here.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the overall impact on the community and on the society. I think that colleges and universities really are, so unique in their governance structure. People talk about shared governance. We have academic freedom. We have tenure. It couldn't be farther from a corporate model.
Yeah.
But what do you think will be the lasting impact really of the pandemic? In what ways do you think the life of the academy will be changed forever?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that a few things will change. I'm in this business because of optimism. Young people are our future, and ultimately, hope, as my mentor used to say, is the anticipation of tomorrow, and trying to provide that anticipation with increased excitement. So the first thing I hope we would recognize out of all of this is the interconnectedness of us all. The fact that we go to a grocery store and see through a cashier, I hope is not something that would ever happen again. The fact that we jump in an Uber or some rideshare service and we're not curious about that driver's daily toils. And I hope that would change. And that has an impact on our campus because our students come from a wide variety of backgrounds. And that interconnectedness was important for them to see. International students have had a very different issue from students in New York who couldn't necessarily go back home to a hotspot at that time, which quickly became a hotspot. So we have to be thoughtful about, the people around us. The second thing that I hope will be important is that Howard has been on a caravan to social justice for over 150 years. And right now that caravan is swollen. And so my faculty and students, while they've always been focused on this issue, they now have different partners and they have an ability to expand the universe of people who are there. Those people will leave the caravan eventually. They'll get distracted, they'll get back to whatever their new normal is. And what we must make sure is that when they leave us with enough gas, probably with some new tires, a new engine. And also, though, most importantly, that they leave with our humanity, understanding the amplification of the humanity. Because at the end of the day, this was about people, and it was about making sure that individuals were safe and also recognizing how connected. So I hope, again, in the academy, that what we would do is take the opportunity to educate others who may not have seen how connected we were, and also to recognize that our universities are great resources for our society in terms of research and so on, and what good they can bring, and that we would really emphasize that going forward.
Interestingly, along those same lines, the whole push for more interdisciplinariness as a result, that connectedness you're talking about, and the expansion of the global reach, really, of the classroom. Before, if you wanted to have an outside speaker, you had to plan it and travel and wonder about schedules. Today, we do what we're doing right now. And it's a great resource for the enrichment of what goes on in the classroom and in the life of the academy and in even the research end of things. I mean, you can have partners you never would have had before. So I think, there's that side of it as well,
Yeah, absolutely. At Howard, we've been talking to students since I've been here about their mission, not their major, because lots of students come at problems from different angles. And that's what makes, I think, America so strong. That's what I think makes the economy such a vibrant economy, because you have people who may be interested in criminal justice reform, but they may be coming from a sociology background or a law background or a psychology background. And so getting everybody to pour in, we have an atmospheric science program here at Harvard University that involves our sociologists, our law faculty, our scientists from physics, chemistry, engineering. And that's the beauty of, I think, trying to work on those problems, to your point. Having said that, I still think that the essence of the human condition is interaction, not isolation. And so I agree, it's great that we could connect like this, but I think especially for young people who are developing and coming into their own, that socialization is important, that incidental contact, unplanned contact, as it were, with that person from New York while you're from LA, or hearing them listen to a certain song that strikes you a different way and makes you get into a conversation that ends up being a lifelong, friendship is still a big aspect of what our universities and colleges offer.
Yeah, no question. I think it's been very hard. It depends on which side of the brain is dominating your personality and characteristics. And for some students, it's been extremely difficult, particularly, I think, the creative design students who need the hands-on, who are tactile and need that connection, as you say. So you are, you're an educator, you're an administrator, you're a surgeon, you're a health professional. So it seems that this past year probably tested each of your skill sets in one way or another. So undoubtedly, you and Howard are stronger for it. We all learned things as we stayed on this journey for the last year. But the thing that always occurs to me is the awesome thing about the responsibility of your job really is to prepare and support the next generation of leaders. Position the students for that next step and to take the reins of leadership. So what are you sensing from the students? I realize they're not there, but I know there's contact and there's dialogue that still goes on. Do you think they're reconsidering their career paths? Are they awakened politically in a different way? Because as you say, there's new partners who want to be part of this journey suddenly. What are you sensing?
I'm sensing excitement. I have the awesome and humble privilege to still be able to operate at Howard and teach. I teach a doctorate class on higher education leadership in the School of Education. And when I say I teach that class, I mean, I am the professor of record. So I have to turn in the grades and grade the papers. And I also teach the sophomore medical students, the juniors and seniors on clerkship rotations, and I interact with the trainees in the hospital. So I really get a lot of exposure on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, this morning, for instance, I was making teaching rounds with 5 young women on general surgery rotation, and we were talking about breast cancer. But the pandemic is always, one topic removed from whatever the topic of the day is. And I mention that because I think the young people are actually excited about the future, and excited in the sense that what they have gone through over this past year has certainly been traumatic. But I think if we look back in the history of America, every golden generation, as it were, has been born out of some type of adversity. So whether you look at after the world wars or you look after the Vietnam crisis, whatever it is, that group of young people, you look at them some 20 years removed from whatever that incident is, and you see a burgeoning of that courage and what they got from it. Same thing with 9/11. I think we're on the cusp now. If you look at people who were in their 20s at that point, they're beginning to emerge as leaders in our society. And clearly, that incident left a mark on them. And I think that's what we will see. The promising thing I think I hear from these students as well is that they recognize the interconnectedness. And because they live in a time where that global connectedness is there, there's no problem too far flung from where they are. And that's one thing about them that I think is going to be very different from any generation. I think we looked at problems locally, regionally, and maybe nationally. These students are looking at problems globally. So they don't see vaccine hesitancy in the Black community. They look at what's happening globally in terms of vaccine distribution. They're not just concerned about their part of the world. I think that's going to be interesting in terms of what they do. And the second thing is I really believe that they are way more altruistic than any recent generations. There's data to support that. If you look at, depending on what measure you want to use, whether it's truancy, drug use, whatever measure you want to use, they are very altruistic. They're concerned about others as well. And I think that that's extremely important. And I'm seeing that in them. And then ultimately, this type of thing begins at home. I have a 16-year-old son who will be 17 next month and a 14-year-old daughter who will be 15 in July. And I see that altruism and that compassion for others in them. At the beginning of this crisis, my kids had so many conversations with me about what do people do when they don't have a room to quarantine? You know, how do people get tested when they live in an area where it's very rural? They have to drive pretty far. And I was pretty impressed that the two of them would be that concerned. My daughter has asthma, so my son, as soon as 16-year-olds could get the vaccine, he got it because he wanted to protect her. You know, and so that type of engagement that I even see right within the four walls of my home, I think stretches to that generation. And so I'm also pretty excited about what they're going to do as they go into their future.
Well, I think to your point, it starts at home, and they see and listen to you, and they see the work that you do, and it instills in young people the guidance for how they live their lives and what they take to heart as being, you know, the guiding lights for what they do. So, you know, I think it doesn't happen by accident.
I appreciate it.
And the other part of your point, though, when you talk about the altruism and the concern for others, the concern for the planet is very, very much in the forefront and impressive, I think, with students. And I see it with the creative students who are wanting to make designs that are not going to damage the planet, you know, that are going to use less water and less toxic chemicals and less dyes. And I think that translates, you know, in the ways that you're speaking about. It's not just about their narrow focus of life, but rather taking on a sense of responsibility for reaching out and embracing those with less. I wonder if in your students, I've certainly seen it. You'd say your children were talking about the people who live in rural areas. You know, there are many young people who, you know, were quarantined at home with parents and siblings and, you know, not a lot of room to begin with. And if they're lucky, one computer and everybody needing to do their work. I mean, so there are many aspects of the pandemic that have been inequitable in their effect, you know.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. You know, we had a food pantry on campus, as many campuses do, and we had to keep it open the entire time of the pandemic because it was so needed. And that, of all the things I saw, that probably really impacted me a lot because recognizing that you have young people who are pursuing higher education, and at the same time having to jump over so many hurdles. Early on in the pandemic as well, I had a student who was very interested in medicine, wanted to get to know me. I would have freshman students in undergrad actually come to the operating room if they have an interest in medicine. And so lots of them always sign up. And so he, not being able to do that, wanted to get on a Zoom call, and we did. And I immediately realized that his background seemed to be a very big, large space. And so I just kind of casually, then I saw somebody from a custodial staff going by in the background. And so I inquired where he was. And he basically was at a community college in his home state of Minnesota, because he's one of nine kids in a house, a 2-bedroom house. And he said the only place he could study was at this place. And, those types of things resonate with you, to your point that they are in spaces. The other thing I would say is, while there's been a lot of focus around STEM and health, one of the things I hope as well that we will walk away from this with is that all our students, as you refer to the creative students, my students in fine arts, they also have given voice to concerns and to those who otherwise may not be able to express their concerns. And so their creativity is an expression of advocacy as well. And I think that that's something that I hope as we come out of this, we will embrace more and more. As I operate on patients with cancer, I'm always really humbled by the fact that regardless of what great work I may be able to do in the operating room, ultimately, if the room isn't cleaned well by the custodial staff, I won't have a good outcome. And then post-operatively, the people that can really lift the spirits of those patients over the course of time really change who they are. So we've had, for instance, our students who play, string instruments go down to our cancer center and play from time to time when patients are getting their chemo. And I can't tell you how much it impacts their well-being. And so we are really into an interdisciplinary period, as you were saying, where we have to look at the full, I would say, breadth of what we offer and make sure that we're really speaking to students' missions fully and not just getting them, myopically focused on a major.
The calming effect of the art form and the expression, really, as you say, it's a great vehicle. I do hope that that others will embrace it as well. At the college I run, we serve the creative industries. That's really, we turn out business students who serve the creative industries. Nobody's coming to FIT for an MBA. They're going to really, that's their path. And we're in the process. You talked earlier about social justice being part of the mission. We're in the process of launching a social justice center, and the real aim is to create a pipeline and a pathway for young students, for talented students of color to identify with people like you. There should only be in industry people who have, that holistic approach. But essentially what we're talking about is grooming these young people for a seat in the C-suite in the industries that they want to work in, because it will make a tremendous difference in terms of the leadership and what the path is in those industries going forward. So, I'm a big believer that we should all leverage whatever we have, and that there's a great strength in collaboration, in partnership and the different strengths that the different ones bring to the table. So we might have another conversation at a later time for a collaboration and a partnership that I think would be very valuable for
Absolutely.
both sets of students. I'm sure you see that. You talked about the journey that everyone is trying to get on with the train that's moving, and I wonder in what ways you see the possibility of leveraging that, because they are going to get distracted, and it's not going to be, we're a year out from the great reckoning of society about, the ways in which obstacles and challenges have deterred the progress of really talented, brilliant young minds. So I don't know, if you're seeing new ways that you can form partnerships and have, private sector kinds of support that makes a tremendous difference in these kids' lives.
Yeah, most certainly. We have been focused very much on workforce development. When I came into the presidency, I have always felt that, our higher ed institutions always have a purist element, as it were. We're kind of doing God's work on God's time and with God's money. The problem is I don't have access to the latter two. So as a result, what I try to convince my colleagues of is that we have to partner with people who have those types of opportunities and resources in order to get where we want. And one of the things I've observed with workforce development is that I think we do a really earnest and good job of trying to prepare young people for the workplace. The issue is that a lot of times industry then gets them and spends even more time trying to get them prepared for their particular area. And the attrition rate tends to be high, and young people today are so mobile. So what I've been trying to convince industry leaders to do is to partner with us in their preparation. Don't wait until they leave, but partner with us in the third and fourth year. And not just partner in terms of internships, but really try to impact the curriculum and the matriculation so it's as contemporary and competitive as can be. And so we've done that with Howard West, where we've sent students out to Google engineers, co-teach the classes like algorithms and machine learning with our faculty. That helps the faculty as well because they have a contemporary experience. Currently, we have Howard Entertainment, where last year, pre-pandemic, we sent students out to Hollywood, to Amazon Studios, and industry leaders, again, were co-teaching them with our faculty, and they're doing it virtually this year. We hope to be able to get back to in person, but we're trying to build those types of models out throughout, because I think those collaborations are key to the country's economic success as well, because we can't just simply keep saying that we need to give people clinical skill set training and push them out into the economy. I think we have to partner with industry and make sure that we give them the right tools. And yes, college and university isn't for everyone, but for those that choose it, we should really make sure that they get the best of both worlds in terms of what industry can impact in terms of how the curriculum is taught while they're here, at our institutions.
In a sense, I think industry learns from the students as well, because they bring a diverse point of view. They bring a diverse set of experiences. So it's, to your point, we shouldn't graduate them and then try and mold them into what already exists. I think that when you look at the demographics of our society, the leadership is going to change. The workforce is going to change. There's not only going to be different skills, there's going to be different points of view that have to be incorporated. And I think the way to do that, to your point, is do it while we're producing this next cadre of leaders. So, but to your point of Hollywood, you recently reestablished your College of Fine Arts and made a wonderful appointment of Dean Felicia Rashad. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about your vision for that college.
Yeah. Howard's College of Fine Arts, I think, is one of the cornerstones of what makes Howard University what we are today. Our College of Fine Arts has produced some amazing alum, right? You look at Jesse Norman, Felicia Rashad, Debbie Allen, Taraji Henson, Chadwick Boseman, Suzanne Kelechi Watson, Danny Hathaway. I mean, the number of people who have walked those halls is amazing. And as I looked at where our strengths were, I saw a natural strength there that even without investment and focus, we were still producing people of that high quality. And so, I felt it was important for us to bring the college back. I actually, when I brought Chadwick Boseman for commencement to do the commencement address, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make the announcement there. I also wanted to convince him to be on our board of visitors. And also we started working on a couple of projects, including a masterclass. And so that commitment from the alum, I think the talent of the students that I was seeing, the ongoing commitment of the faculty, I felt that we should bring back. Now, in terms of vision and moving forward, I do want to give voice to stories that are necessary. The fact that we now live in an era where we see criminal justice through the eyes of somebody's cell phone, taking a video of somebody being murdered, is tragic, but it also is a result of not telling those stories about the Black experience and about different experiences, Asian American experiences. We haven't been doing a good job of doing that. We now have been doing that almost in a reality TV fashion. And I think we have to get back to telling the stories. And so what I want to see come out of the College of Fine Arts eventually is that we will tell those stories, whether it's through art or through music or through a production company, which I certainly envision us having as well. I want to give voice to the voiceless. And I think that that will help move the reckoning that you were speaking to earlier. It will help move it along and it will give it some framing. And young people as well have to hear these stories and understand, because the other thing that I think exists in terms of tension is because some of those stories weren't well documented. Young people today, when you think of cancel culture, some of that comes from them not believing that what has happened in the past has worked or has been effective. And that again is because we haven't told that story well. We haven't told the story of SNCC and we haven't told the story of the civil rights movement in a good way. Even Howard's story hasn't necessarily been told well, right? The president who signed Howard's charter, the president of the United States, the 17th president, President Johnson, was a known misogynist and a known racist. And he gave rise to a university that would go on to produce the first female and Black vice president. And that's why, while our democracy is messy, it works. But we have to tell that story in ways that young people can appreciate it. Right? But we're not trying to convince them of anything. We're just trying to tell them the reality and give them broader perspectives.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a tremendous opportunity, and they shouldn't feel as if we're convincing them of something. You're right. The frustration and that I see in the young people when they essentially are saying exactly what you said, that it didn't work. Why are you continuing to do that? But, I hear the voice of my mother in my head who says, you think that what you have today was always that way. It was a tremendous struggle and battle, and it's on the shoulders of other people that have gotten you to enjoy the things you have today. I mean, the John Lewis story, as that got told, with his passing, there's so many lessons there, the perseverance and just the narrative. So I think that's it's a great opportunity, and I'm really so glad you're doing that. Your career really, I think a lot of your career, you have focused on the inequities inherent in the healthcare delivery system. And certainly the pandemic showcased and almost exacerbated those discrepancies. What is your thought? Do you think we're making progress in terms of the systemic and kind of root causes of those disparate delivery systems?
I'm always going to be the optimist, so I have to say yes. We're probably subset no in certain specific areas. The first thing is I'm not sure that we have a healthcare system that is supporting the full breadth of a holistic approach to healthcare. We complain a lot about the cost, but at the end of the day, I don't think we've adopted a holistic approach. That's number one. Number two, we still are supporting a healthcare system that puts the physician at the center of the system rather than the patient. We need to become obsessed about the patient. and put the patient at the center of the system. And what do I mean by that? Physicians, nurses, dentists, pharmacists, allied health professionals, all should be spokes in that wheel that are attempting to move the patient into wellness and to maintain or heighten their wellness. And so the way for us to do that is to build a system where if you go to the dentist, you can get your blood pressure screened, you can get a fasting glucose done, so that we have increasingly more points of contact in the system that will help with prevention and promotion of wellness. Right now, we complain about having a shortage of physicians, and the focus always is we have to get more physicians. And I just disagree with that. I think, and don't get me wrong, I do think we need more physicians, and especially physicians of color, but I also think we need to use people in the system that are well-trained. I mean, you go to your dentist and you get an anesthetic, they're checking your blood pressure, they're doing several other things, and we need to give them more of an opportunity. You go into the pharmacy, that should be a place where you can get screening for common medical problems, or at least be educated about those screenings. And I think if we increase those touch points, we have an opportunity. The third thing is, with the pandemic, it was obvious that the social determinants of health are expansive. And so we have to have novel approaches. Here at Howard, I approached the Dean of the College of Nursing and Allied Health to send our nutritional science students out into Ward 7 and 8, where 95% of the residents are African American, and there's a food desert. For 160,000 people, I believe we have 2 full-service groceries. And my idea was let them go out and shop with those citizens, collect the information, and send it back to their primary care physician. So over time, they can, educate them about healthy meals, what to put together, those types of things. As you said, students always teach us something new. So they decided that not only would they do that, but they would go to the corner stores. Why? The citizens are more likely to go to the corner store on a more regular basis. So they worked with the corner store proprietors and spoke to them about shelving, about healthier choices. And, it's a type of effort that helps promote health and also gets us out of this issue that these disparities must exist. And I think that we have to change that attitude. So I think how we educate our healthcare providers going forward needs to change. And I think we also have to embrace the fact that all of the healthcare providers can actually contribute to a better system.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the holistic approach and the intersectionality of the various levels of healthcare delivery. Another place, not to distract us, but another place that would be a wonderful approach and perhaps a solution to some of the problems is in the criminal justice system. When people talk about defunding the police, I think that when you really examine what's being said is that we're asking police to do something they're not trained to do, and we should have a holistic approach with the social workers and the psychologists and, the healthcare providers, the ways in which to diffuse and treat and have a delivery system that treats the whole person. And I think
this is another reason why language matters, why humanities matter, because we wouldn't have ended up with Operation Warp Speed, which again, words matter. People hear things and they have certain connotations. I think same thing with defunding the police. The tagline should have been funding the support of police.
Correct.
The auxiliary or ancillary support. I mean, that's really what people are talking about, that you need more mental health care professionals probably out in the community and out in the system, filling in the gaps that, to your point, law enforcement isn't trained or prepared to do. And that's really what we're talking about. And you want to fund all of that, but you want to make sure that the funding is equally distributed to where the problems are. Right now, we are funding a large law enforcement activity, as it were, and we're underfunding what could help close those gaps that you're referring to. And if we looked at it more holistically in terms of maintaining and what we want the police to do, right, to protect and serve, then we should be thinking about funding those gaps, and that would lessen the burden on law enforcement as well, and probably create much better outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. I want to get to a couple of other things before we run out of time. We could have this conversation for many more hours, I'm sure. But the universities are really such a transformative force in the lives of the individuals, particularly, I think, for students of color, and particularly for students who are from lower socioeconomic circumstances, like the young man who has nowhere to study, but who obviously has the motivation and the aspiration for success enough to take himself out of his situation and figure out how he can focus and get ahead. What do you think should be the voice when we talk about, addressing the disparities in the economic impact of the practices, of society? It's the same in the healthcare. It's disparate and it's as it has always been.
Yeah.
What do you think the role of the university can be? I mean, you have such a wealth of talent that is coming through the ranks of your classrooms and your projects and your research.
Yeah.
How do we get that message out? How do we have an impact that is commensurate with what the results could be?
And I think we have to take two approaches. One is education is still the economic escalator of our time, without a doubt. You look at earnings based on level of education, and you see it. You look at the jobs of the future and where those jobs are heading, et cetera. I think you see that opportunity. That's one aspect. The second aspect, though, is we must recognize that we're preparing people to participate in the betterment of society, but we don't have to do that at the risk of them not being able to earn and not being able to add to generational wealth. So sometimes, for instance, when we discuss the humanities, I think it's unfortunate that we see it through the lens that we do. Howard is trying to set up a social innovation hub in which we are going to go after the big problems of the day: income inequality, criminal justice reform, climate change. But we want the humanities to be the core of that innovation hub, and to wrap that with the things like AI and the technology opportunities, as well as entrepreneurship. Because my argument still is that these young people can go out and solve for criminal justice reform while setting up their own nonprofit and still doing well, but seeing an opportunity, or for that matter, set up a business that fills some of those gaps we were just speaking about in law enforcement, as an example, and compete for some federal job training programs, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think that's one argument we must make. Our universities must be more nimble. Unfortunately, most of our universities are like flotillas, and just making a decision to turn is filled with bureaucracy and politics. And so we have to try to slim down to get more catamaran-like, right? So that we could be more effective. And so I think if we look at those two things and we try to be more efficient, I think we can influence industry and get them to partner with us on making, better, swifter decisions.
Yeah. I keep saying the pandemic sort of gave us a rocket shoot into a place where we had to adjust. Without the pandemic, we would probably be in committees talking about whether we could deliver instruction remotely. And we wouldn't come out of committee for another couple of years, I'm sure. Anyway, I see John has joined us. I think that's a signal.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. So we are out of time. Joyce, thank you so much, Wayne. This has been a terrific conversation, wide-ranging. I will remember the line about universities are like flotillas. But again, thank you for sharing your time and your insights. It was really terrific. Looking ahead, please, to report that we have many guest speakers lined up. We encourage you to attend and invite guests to our events. Next week, we've got Darren Walker, president of the Ford Foundation, on May 26th. We also have on May 27th, Larry Summers and Glenn Hubbard. The week after that, we have my colleague Lael Brainerd, member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. She'll be here on June 1st. Then on June 8th, we have Peter Gelb, the General Manager of the Metropolitan Opera, along with Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts President and CEO, Henry Timms. And then on June 10th, we have Connie Evans, President and CEO of AEO. And of course, we're going to have many more events. We're looking to break new records in terms of the number of club events. So please keep a lookout on your emails and our website. And if you'd like to become a member, please email the club at the address that's on the screen. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to recognize those of our 335 members of the Centennial Society who are joining us today, as their contributions continue to be the financial backbone of support for the club and help enable us to offer our wonderful, diverse programming now and in the future. So thank you again, and please stay healthy and safe.